I do remember feeling very angry with God as I was battling, because it took me 2 years to just give up. I
Mm.
mean, it was a battle I couldn't fight. It was an impossible battle. Like I was done. Like I had the only reason I was still Christian by the time I, gave up was because I decided to be. I got to a point where I didn't have faith. The doubt was, overwhelming, but I still so badly wanted it because it was my whole community, and it was my vision for like a happy, fulfilled future. And it was all I knew. And then I worked with this coach, and she really helped me realize how I was abandoning myself my whole life by worrying about what other people are feeling. I used to think that as a people pleaser, I wanted to please people. I liked to please people. I love people and I love seeing them happy. And so, but she helped me understand that because of all of the just distress that I was experiencing in my body to make sure that everyone else was pleased and to, you know, insert myself, even if my opinion wasn't wanted or no one was asking me for help, to control, how other people were feeling, how that wasn't really loving to them. And it actually wasn't loving to myself because I'm in this inner misery trying to, control and be on hyper alert and all of that, which I never even considered.
I had such a wonderful time having this conversation with Michaela. It's always cool to connect with other second, third culture families and to especially to dive into deconstructing journeys. Something that was really interesting about this one was just diving into the relationship with her and her parents and how much that affected her spiritual evolution. I really, really appreciate just her honesty, and I really felt like we could have talked for hours and hours more. It was so interesting to hear about the different things that gave her perspective and opened her up to wonder and what more could be out there in connecting with something that feels authentic, that feels close and meaningful. And now, because of all the work that she has done in finding herself and with her qualifications of being a licensed clinical social worker and a trauma informed therapist, now that the work that she does is help other women deconstructing from Christianity, evangelical mindsets, etc., to connect with their authentic spiritual identity. And that is such a beautiful thing. So let's get to know Michaela. Hello, welcome, Michaela. It's so nice to meet you.
So much. It's so great meeting you as well.
Yay. So, could you give us a brief introduction of yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Michaela Giordano Castro. I am a licensed clinical social worker. So I do therapy with clients mainly around eating disorders, trauma, even a little bit around religion, but most of my work regarding religion and spirituality is through my coaching business. So I have that as well. And the goal there is to support those who either are deconstructing or have deconstructed from religion, specifically towards finding and building their own authentic spirituality and just kind of navigating the challenges there with support, as I've definitely gone through that journey myself.
Oh man, it's so good and powerful to connect with people who've been there, and it can be so lonely and scary coming away from everything you know. And I know it's not religion based at all, but we chatted a little bit before we hit record that you have a huge story from when you were a child of completely leaving everything you knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about how when I was 8 years old, I moved to Sicily. So my dad is Sicilian, born and raised there. And growing up, I had been there, I don't know how many times by the time I was 8. I think we were going uh, about once a year or so, maybe every 2 years. I don't remember that young, but I've been many times already. But just for like a little bit here and there. And I never knew the language. My dad didn't speak to us in Italian. My mom didn't either. They would show us like Italian cartoons here and there, but I remember when we moved to Italy, I knew how to say hi, bye, chocolate milk, I'm hungry, things like that. So we moved to Italy, and I think I had the summer there before we started school. But then we started school, and it was a um, private Catholic school, actually, that we went to in Sicily. And it was run by nuns, and it was very intense. I mean, that was a big shift as well. I was used to, Texas public elementary school, and the school in Italy in general is very different. But then on top of it, I don't know how much different it was in the public schools, but yeah, these nuns were fierce. They were very fierce about making sure everyone was in line, and we're just like, they don't do this in America. Slamming the books on the table or slapping, kids' wrists or even their faces if they were really bad. That was some intense stuff and the homework and all of that. So yeah, I learned Italian by going to school, just kind of being dropped in there. But I'm
And
so glad that I learned. So
and
it's
how old were you when you left?
so it was kind of interesting. We were a little bit back and forth. So we moved there because my dad wanted to give back to his community because he had gone to Bible school, and that's actually where he met my mom. Her college had a thing in Florence, and he went to the Bible school there, and that's how they met. So he wanted to give back by being the preacher in Sicily, or not in Sicily, but in our town in Sicily. And, so I was there for fourth grade. And then my mom, with us kids, moved back to America for fifth grade. And then we moved back to be with my dad for like half of sixth grade. And that's when we started homeschooling because my mom didn't want us to go to the public middle schools because the Catholic one was only elementary. And then because we were going to be transitioning. So from then on, I was homeschooled except for like 6 weeks in seventh grade. We tried public school again, and then my mom was like, "No, I don't like that. I like homeschool more." um, so yeah, it was a little back and forth, but about 2 years, that I was there, just kind of split up a little bit. But it really helped me to get a lot closer to my family there and learn the language, and so those were big.
So I have a question that might be a little, I don't know, it might be a little dumb, but the was it a Catholic missions organization that your parents met through, or was it a Protestant flavored one?
Not dumb at all. So, my parents were part of the Church of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So, the college that my mom went to is Church of Christ, the Bible school is Church of Christ, my dad's church. Actually, I don't even, well, I guess there was a church there. But yeah, it was Church of Christ. So, we were like very explicitly distinguished from Catholics.
I was
And
like, there's a big disconnect. I grew up evangelical, non-denom, and it's like Catholics weren't even considered Christians. They're like
yeah,
these heathens that worship Mary and dead
yeah,
saints.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But my parents, yeah, I don't really know really why, but they didn't want us going to they preferred us going to the public school, I mean the private school. And so they
Mm-hmm.
just made it very clear to us, like, you're gonna go here, but we believe differently. We don't believe in saints, we don't worship Mary, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so they just made that clear to us, and we just kind of went, I
Did
guess,
you
just for the additional benefits.
did you kind of have this like feeling of we're better than the Catholics because we know the fuller truth than they do?
Yeah, it's hard not to, I mean, that was so prevalent throughout my journey with religion that I felt, I mean, it wasn't like all pride, part of it I think was also like gratitude, but because of this belief that we're the ones who have it right, we're the ones who figured it out. Yeah, so there was absolutely that was
Were you
present.
were you raised with like a I've got to tell people about Jesus to save them from hell, and the rapture could happen at any second. And purity culture and just all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so it's interesting. My church in America, which we continue to go to once we move back, um, I will give them credit. They were never super like harsh with any of those topics, but at the same time, the topics were present. Um, and then myself personally, I mean, so I became Christian like personally, not just because it was my family's thing when I was 11. And I went really deep into it all, like even more than my parents. To be honest, like in a lot of ways, I was more like just like craving religion and not religion, but the relationship with God and the life of purpose and all those things. So I would invest a lot more time into those topics. Um, but yeah, my church wasn't so much like that. But yeah, there was definitely all of that in kind of some of the things my dad would learn about. Even while he was working as a preacher in Italy, he would have to research topics for every Sunday. And so, all of those topics, did come up. And then I will say, even though my church wasn't pushy in any of these areas, I mean, they did talk some about all of these things. Between my dad's research and what he would share, and then my own stuff, a lot of the books I was reading were around purity culture stuff and being a set apart woman and these different things, being a helpmeet and these different things. So a lot of that came from books for me. And then as far as like the rapture and all of that, definitely came from my dad. He was also into like conspiracy theories. So there was some pretty intense experiences even with those. Like I remember one time my dad was convinced that I think like an asteroid or a meteor was going to hit the Earth. And I remember him thinking it was going to come in October. And I was like 14 years old and he was so convinced we were all going to die. And I remember one night he had all of us get on our knees and all pray to God and like beg him to spare us and protect us with this like upcoming asteroid that was going to kill everyone. And even like with 2012, there was this idea of like
The Mayan
2012.
calendar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I definitely remember like, oh come on, I don't want to die yet. I haven't experienced I haven't had sex yet. Yeah, all these teenager thoughts. But yeah, there was a lot of all those things for sure.
Was that was that a really common thing? Like, was there a disconnect building in your head of, wait, this didn't happen, or is he really, or were you always like 100%? My dad is like this with God and he knows things.
Hmm. No, I remember when I was in Italy, 8 or 9. My dad was, the preacher, and so he would do his research. And I remember one day he literally like sat me on his lap. He was at the computer and he shared a story he found with me. He was like, "Hey, I found this story about Jesus." And so he read me this story, and I don't know where he found it, but it talked about Jesus as a little boy and how another little boy like was mean to him and bumped into him and was rude about it or something, and that Jesus, now I'm forgetting, but I don't remember, or I think he first killed like a bird to show his power as Jesus. And then I can't say he killed the little boy. That couldn't be right. I mean, I can't imagine because, or maybe he did in the story. Something terrible happened. Like he killed the boy because he disrespected him as God. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. Like, I don't think this is accurate. Um, and I remember my mom coming in and being like, "What are you saying? This isn't accurate. Jesus wouldn't do that. He says not to murder and all these different things." So early on, I got the understanding that I think my dad can be a little too quick to believe things. And
Mm.
so throughout my life, he was like that. He liked to research things, and being a preacher just kind of accelerated all that. So even when we moved back, he was self-employed. He could do what he wanted with his time, work or not work. And he would spend a lot of time researching. So even after that, there was a lot of evolution, not always positive, but a lot of change in our religious beliefs as a family. And anytime a shift happened, I was always resistant until it became clear to me as to why it would be right to accept it.
Hmm.
And I always did get there. So, like, we moved from going to church to doing home church. And at first, I was like, I don't know about this. I was super active in my youth group. Not the most like popular, happy in those situations, but I love to do it because I wanted to learn more about God. I like the mission trips and service things and all of that. But eventually I understood, through what he showed me in the Bible and different things, why we would do that. Then over time, we became Messianic Jews. So we had this new understanding of the Bible that, how do we really honor God is to be Jewish like Jesus was, and these kinds of things. So I was always resistant, but the information always ended up making me on board over time, which is why, I think it's so important what kind of information we expose ourselves to, and that we, try not to judge. I mean, even with other topics like aliens and even just like diet and like so many different topics. I mean, depending on what you look at, you can believe something is 100% true or that it's complete ridiculousness. Um, and so, yeah, that really just opened my mind to like how it's not that easy to know what's true. It's all about what you look at. So,
Yeah. And you were somebody that just so desperately wanted authenticity and wanted the real thing, the real deal. I want to jump to when what phase of what was the step of religion that your dad was on when you were at the point of, wait a second, something's not right here. The foundation is rotten.
mm, it's an interesting question, or maybe more of an interesting answer. But when that happened, it was actually because my dad threw all of it away.
Oh.
It was a huge shock, as you can imagine. After,
I don't even know anything but what you've told me, and I'm like, what?
yeah. So I remember I was 16 and it was the Sabbath, and I was, no one made me do this. Again, I would do this, and it wasn't just the authenticity at that point. At that point, it was a lot about the idea of truth, but
Hmm.
also, wanting to live a life of purpose and meaning and live life to the fullest. And I really thought living for God would be the way to have that kind of life. And so on the Sabbath, I would fast. I would only like read Christian books or listen to Christian music and that type of thing. Anything that would bring me closer to God, kind of a thing. And I remember I heard my parents in the living room. And so I went to the living room and I sat down and, I was just going to listen to what they were talking about. So my dad did a lot of talking as an Italian preacher. And I got like it came to me that like, wait, he's saying God's not real. And I literally could not believe my ears. Like I was like, something happened to my ears. I was so confused. But sure enough, yeah, he became an atheist for several months. He ended up turning spirituality outside of religion after, I don't know what it was, 3, 6 months, something of atheism. And by then I was like, I don't want to hear a word you have to say. Like, I don't believe any of your spiritual woo woo. When he was atheist, we would debate a lot because within my homeschooled years in high school, really, I guess it was eighth grade through 11th grade, I did this course called The Great Conversation. And it was this really detailed curriculum for homeschoolers. And I did it in a community, so with other kids my age and with a teacher who had taught this curriculum for years. It was all about learning about everything through the biblical worldview. So, history, literature. We would also learn apologetics, so like how to defend the faith, speech, all these different things. So I felt very prepared. I could defend the faith and I could, prove my dad wrong. And I have his
You could argue him back to Jesus.
right. And so we would talk a lot for years, and it just, I can't remember specific arguments or anything like that, but it just, the doubt just came through so much stronger, I mean, and this is so real in Christianity that a lot of the time you are surrounded by other Christians, and that's like intentional because you don't want to doubt, you don't want to risk being tricked by devils and all of this kind of stuff.
All
So
just an attack. You gotta just fight the attack of the enemy.
yeah, and so it creates this like segregation, really,
Mm.
and that's what I experienced. Especially being homeschooled. I knew a lot of people. There was a big homeschool community in my area, and of course, they're all fundamentalist Christians in their own way. Um, so yeah, I mean, I felt so sure, and I would also spend my free time watching people who were also so sure. Like I would watch the Duggars as much as I could. I know. Now I'm like, oh my God. But at the time, just like the documentary says, there are these happy, smiling people. And I wanted that. That's why I was doing everything I was doing with, Christianity to begin with, because
Were you gonna be a quiverful mama?
I was gonna have whatever kids I could have. Oh my God, not the case anymore. Right now I have zero, and I plan for maybe two of my own from birth, but we'll see. So very different once I actually tune into myself versus what I was being told I should do and would make me happy and all of that. So, I would also watch Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron, who would do like a bunch of like street preaching and all of
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah.
I did feel drawn to that with the mindset that this is how I help people, because who cares about life right now? I mean, I still cared. I still wanted to be happy, but I believed being with God and honoring God is how you are most likely to be happy. And in the grand scheme of things, the best way you can help someone is to keep them from going to hell, of course. And so, that was my goal, was to be a missionary one day, to be a preacher's wife, because as a woman, you couldn't, have any authority. But if I got close to it, I could make more impact.
But I want to ask, if I may, um, did your dad change like for the better coming
Hmm.
away from Christianity? And also, was it a chink in your armor that God wasn't doing his job and bringing him back into the fold?
Hmm. Yes and yes. So it
Wow,
took,
that's really interesting.
yeah, it took time. I mean, it right before, no, yeah, because I was 16. So I think it was a little bit before my dad left religion. He was just in a dark place in general. There was a lot of family drama, and it just got toxic, and this kind of stuff was going on. And I mean, it took years, but I do see how my dad's spiritual journey has really helped him improve as a person. Um, I mean, I think part of that is that when he was in Christianity, he was still, striving for good things, but it's easy to get lost in the specifics of like, okay, but what does God really want from
Yeah.
us?
The dogma, the inflexibility, the fear, the judgment, the never being enough.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can be a good person in these circumstances. You're just constantly feeling like you're never going to be there.
hmm Yeah. So I did see, I do definitely see, especially now. I mean, again, it took years, but it has helped him. And then, yeah, um, I do remember feeling very angry with God as I was battling, because it took me 2 years to just give up. I
Mm.
mean, it was a battle I couldn't fight. It was an impossible battle. Like I was done. Like I had the only reason I was still Christian by the time I, gave up was because I decided to be. I got to a point where I didn't have faith. The doubt was, overwhelming, but I still so badly wanted it because it was my whole community, and it was my vision for like a happy, fulfilled future, and it was all I knew. And so I had talked to an American missionary who would go to Italy, and we were there one time. And, she told me, faith isn't about knowing for sure. Sometimes it's about choosing. And so I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose. But even though I had chosen to have this faith, again, I lived with my dad still. I hadn't left for college or anything. And it just got to the point where it was just too hard. And I felt like I do remember, telling God, like, I can't do this anymore. So if you are there, like, this is on you, as in, like, it's your turn. Like, I've tried so hard and I am so willing to live for you. You know this. You know that I have love for you. You know that I don't see you as this evil, terrible being. And so I need your help. And I just had to just kind of let things go. So there was anger in what was happening with my dad, but also within me because I was trying so hard. I mean, I was researching. I remember I took my first solo trip because I was like, maybe if I go to this conference that this writer I would read was holding, maybe then, God would give me what I need to have faith. And I went to my very strict Christian college that I had already signed up for, choosing Christianity. Even though I had let that door close. I mean, I say I gave up, but it was really like this door was just closing on its own. And I stopped spending all my time trying to keep it open and just kind of let it do what it was already doing and let
Mm.
it close. And so, yeah, I went to this super Christian university for 4 years, even though I had already decided, like, I can't force this door open anymore. I'm not Christian. Um, and yeah.
Wow. That sounds like quite the journey. Just looking at the trajectory of life, like it would have been so easy for your dad to have just continued on that path and become a full-blown MAGA Trumper person.
Mm.
It's so what wonderful news that he went the other way. Like, so was it how was it when you told your family, okay, I'm not a Christian anymore either. We're all together here.
Mm. I think it is worth noting what you mentioned first because again, when it comes to depending on what you look at, information on the internet can be pretty dangerous. And I will say that like that was a really bad time as well, was like during COVID. And my dad was very into like everything's just trying to kill us except for the coronavirus. That's not real. And you're gonna die if you get a vaccine. Which I did. He told me I was gonna die in 2 years, and I'm still alive. So
Congrats.
but that was a low for sure. And he did get kind of sucked into that. But now in recent years, again, I said it took some years. He has distanced himself more from all of that. Is more focused on the positivity and love and those kinds of things, which is good. But yeah, it's scary. What was your question?
How was it when you told your family, like, okay, I also am no longer a Christian?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, for starters, this was obviously a pain point in my family because, you know, even so when my dad was atheist, especially, his message was very much like, you are dumb if you continue to be manipulated by religion.
Mm,
And my mom very much also really wanted to hold on to religion. I mean, it was all she knew, it was all her family, it was her source of community.
right.
So that created a rift between them, and their marriage did not survive that, as well as other
Oh.
things that, happened. But um, so, it was different between my mom and my dad. I don't remember when exactly I told my dad that I didn't believe, but I I think it was one day when I was visiting home from college that he was, because after he left atheism and was this like more new age spirituality person or spiritual without religion, he was now pushing that on me. He likes to push whatever he thinks is best.
You can't help but be an evangelist.
Exactly. So he was now pushing this. And, in some of his arguments, he would try to kind of give the argument argument that like, look, it's even in the Bible. Like this spiritual idea is real and it's in these places and it's even in the Bible. And so when he would bring up the Bible, I would get very angry. I'd be like, why are you I don't care. Like it's your fault that I don't even believe in this anymore. Why are you showing me the Bible to support your point? Um, so I was more willing to tell him, but like in more of like a lash out way of like, you got what you want. But I don't care about your other spiritual stuff either. Like I'm done with anything you have to say about any of this topic, even though I would still listen to him. I would somewhat listen and somewhat kind of just drone some of it out because if we spent time together, a lot of it was him talking. But when it came to my mom, I was very scared. I remember it was hard for me going to my university. It was out of state, which that was fine. I mean, I wanted to go out of state. Um, but at this university, it was chapel every day, Bible every semester. There was so many rules to keep people pure and all of this stuff. And I was afraid of people finding out that I was not Christian because I felt like I'm the only one here who is like that, which wasn't true. I did end up meeting several other people who were also not Christian over time, but initially it was tough. And so I started to see a counselor for free at the university. I remember talking to her about this, about talking to my mom, and um, she helped me to make that step. She encouraged me, and I remember we were in the car one day. She was driving, and I told her, I said, "I have something to tell you," and I said, "I'm not a Christian anymore." And she was sad. I think she was upset and disappointed even, but she didn't, push me or try to convince me or anything like that. However, for several years, she would still like text me to pray for so and so and ask me to come to church all the time and these different things. And again, in the beginning, I I was angry, I was hurt, I would be very upset with her. I wouldn't show it or take it out on her, but I would feel upset when she would do that because I'd be like, why are you asking me to pray for this person? I told you I'm not Christian. Um, so there was a lot to heal for myself when it came to really spirituality. I lived as an agnostic for 10 years. And then, I eventually had a spiritual awakening outside of religion, which is why I'm so passionate about the coaching work that I do. But it was hard.
I'd love to hear about the spiritual awakening.
Sure, yeah. Okay, this is how I kind of see it as unfolding. I got married in December of 2022. And pretty soon after that, my relationship started to fall apart. And we had been together for 5 years already when we got married. And so I felt like I knew enough to make this decision and all of that. But then it's like, I feel like my eyes opened to how much I would tolerate and just how much in general I wasn't choosing myself. And I had like a breakdown because my mind was convinced that I made the wrong choice. And I, my mom just helped me, have this wedding. She did like so much for us to have this beautiful wedding. I had just promised myself in front of like 100+ people that I knew, and I was like, I'm screwed. But this was all just like me just in a bad place. And on top of it, I got rear-ended by a drunk driver, smashed into my car and totaled my car. And my cat was killed by the neighbor's dogs. And like all this happened in like a week. That like I had this realization, lost my car and had like a mini concussion or who knows what happened, and my cat died. So I was having a terrible week. And I felt desperate. And there was this relationship coach on Instagram that I reached out to. She had a post, it resonated with me, and I was like, I'm interested in a free call. So I ended up working with this relationship coach. I was seeing a therapist, but she wasn't able to really help me with what I knew I needed help with in, which was learning how to actually choose myself. And I was so focused on what other people are feeling, how can I control how other people feel so I feel safe, all of that was my reality. And that work was really powerful. I remember in our free call that I had asked her about spirituality because I was starting to get a little bit curious. And again, for so many years, I was just so turned off to all of it. And a lot of that was because I thought that, well, if I got it wrong before, I could get it wrong again. And I don't want to feel that pain and that just kind of distress of just not knowing what's true. I also believe that we couldn't possibly know what's true, so why try? But I never said I was atheist because I was just like, I don't know, there were interesting things I learned, but again, I'm not gonna dabble with it.
Also, it's so boring. Atheism is so boring. Like nothing. It's so much more fun to be like maybe aliens, maybe ghosts. We don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I will say a few other things that really had an impact on me, which yes, both of these, I think both of these I learned about before I worked with that coach. I watched a docu-series called um, How to Change Your Mind. And it's a Harvard professor who has done different research into psychedelics. And it's this docu-series on Netflix that talks about different psychedelics and the research behind how they can improve mental health. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm in the mental health field. But what hit me on the spiritual side from this docu-series was that he they would report that like a lot of people would claim to have the most spiritual experience of their lives on psychedelics. And I thought that was interesting too. I was like, you can have a spiritual experience on psychedelics. I'm like, I want a spiritual experience. Like, wait, this is out of religion and you're feeling a spiritual experience? Like, interesting. So that that opened my mind to it more because again, it was like a plant contributing to a person's spiritual experience, not, you know, music designed to stir up your feelings, which there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion, but it wasn't that. It wasn't people telling you what to think or do. It was like an actual just inborn experience facilitated by a plant. So that got me curious. Then in time, I also watched this docu-series called Surviving Death, and it had a lot of, have you seen that?
It's so good.
Yeah, it's so good. I think episode one, and I think it's the last one is episode six. Those were the ones that really like hit me most because of, I think it's those two, just like all the evidence behind reincarnation, and then also people's experiences of near-death experiences that just kind of resonated, and just people knowing things they couldn't have possibly known while they're dead, and all of this. I'm like, okay, there's got to be something like, which again, a part of me already knew, but wasn't ready to look at that yet. So that created some more openness too. And then I worked with this coach, and she really helped me realize how I was abandoning myself my whole life by worrying about what other people are feeling. I used to think that as a people pleaser, I wanted to please people. I liked to please people. I love people and I love seeing them happy. And so, but she helped me understand that because of all of the just distress that I was experiencing in my body to make sure that everyone else was pleased and to, insert myself, even if my opinion wasn't wanted or no one was asking me for help, to control, how other people were feeling, how that wasn't really loving to them. And it actually wasn't loving to myself because I'm in this inner misery trying to, control and be on hyper alert and all of that, which I never even considered or thought about. I thought I like to do this. I love people. I love to help people.
Oh gosh,
So
are we the same person?
so many of us, honestly. But it's true, and there's such a shift when you realize that. And what helped me a lot was learning about my inner child and just kind of like just kind of seeing that inner child and making decisions for her. So, it's hard for me to choose me, but if I thought of my inner child and like how much I was making her suffer if I was, focusing too much on how someone else is upset, it's like, wait, they can be upset. I'm not going to let my inner child get into a, tangent over this. I'm going to let them feel what they're feeling, take care of her to get through my feelings, that kind of thing. So that helped me a lot.
So, were you working to a point, or can I ask a question?
I am to the more awakening stuff, but feel
Oh,
free to
okay.
throw questions. I know it's a long story.
No, it's all good. It's the fun struggle of a podcast host is when do I interject? Um,
Yeah, you're good. I
so
know
it's
this.
like a lot of these things were just um, catalysts all coming together to build up to the crescendo of your spiritual awakening.
Yeah, and the crescendo in of itself was interesting because it kind of surprised me, it like came out of the blue in a way. So what happened was, and nowadays I am more curious around astrology because it was right around, I mean, it was before, but it was also around the time of the big eclipse last April, I think it was. But it was before that. So in March of last year, which coincidentally was 10 years from when I let the door close on spirituality. And I realized that after I was like, anyways, we'll get there. But um, so around March of last year, I had done this awesome work with my coach. We had finished, and I was choosing myself so much more. I even started like a public account to try to like have more of an impact on the world. But then I got burnt out with social media. I got caught up in life and work again. And, I went through like somewhat of a depressive period. I was just mainly like working and reading my romantasy books. So at a certain point, again, it was like not super crescendo-esque, but I just remember that I started feeling differently. One thing that played a role was I read this book called, well, it was a book for therapists to have more of an impact through coaching because there's less red lines and you can be more public about your story. Whereas, I mean, you can do great things with therapy too, but basically part of this book involved this chapter on like energy and different universal laws and different things like that. And I remember this one specific part that talked about how if you look at your hand, you will see a hand, but in reality, it's all just energy. You know, everything is just energy. I mean, if you had a super strong microscope, you wouldn't see your hand, you would see this energy kind of vibrating around. And so from that, she was talking about how everything is energy and we can influence energy through, what we do, what we think, how we feel. In the book, she also shared Dr. I forget his name, but there is this scale of emotion and the vibration with our emotions. So one of the most dense emotions and vibrations is like fear, and then one of the highest ones is love. And so basically, this kind of combined with everything else got me more interested in open to spirituality again. And so I think that kind of helped break things through. And then from there, I was seeing all these synchronicities. I mean, so many things were happening in my life that were just felt like, you know, God, 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 just kind of showing me a path and just giving me confirmations. And again, the eclipse happened, several weeks after that, and that in of itself, I had a experience of just like a revelation of further of what I was already talking about of just being able to let people have their experience, even if that means they think I'm the bad guy. You know, their soul is on its own journey, and it's not for me to control how my part in their journey. It's just my responsibility to do my best. And yeah, from there, I haven't looked back.
Wow. So it's interesting how it's been a very cerebral journey for you, hasn't it? It's
Mm.
always been about getting out of your brain or fitting yourself into whatever box your dad had set up.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a big logic piece that's always been present. Even within Christianity, I was very much taught that this is the most rational way to live as well. This is logical. This is truth. All of that. Um, so I needed some of that to turn to spirituality. But I think, I mean, honestly, I mean, looking back and being where I'm at now, I've always been like, I just feel like it's like rooted in me to be spiritual. I think it is in all of us in a lot of ways.
mm,
But like when I was not just a kid doing what my parents said, but in my own religion and spirituality. I mean, there's a difference between religion and spirituality. You can
oh,
have, but you don't always, and you can also have them without the other. And I was not only religious but also spiritual. But so I let the religion close, and I myself closed the door on spirituality because I was just hurt and scared and didn't want to deal with it. But when that door has been opened, faith is something that comes pretty naturally to me, and I have a strong desire again to live with meaning and purpose, and to work with whatever forces I can get support through to do more of that in my time on earth and those kinds of things. So so yeah, once I returned to spirituality, it just all seemed so clear. Again, the whole 10 years thing. Because when I left spirituality, I told God, like, I've done it the best I can. If you're really there, I know you could, and I know you would, because I never saw God as this like mean, evil being that's just waiting to throw you into hell when you mess up. Like, I truly felt that love that I believe was real if there was some kind of God. Otherwise, there was nothing. But I wasn't going to say that for sure. And so once my awakening happened, I was like, well, maybe this is why. 10 years, that's a pretty convenient number.
yeah.
And now I understand what it's like to maybe help people in a similar journey. And again, between everything else and then also that book, that was to encourage therapists towards the coaching route. And so yeah, it just all led me to where I am now.
So it was, so that journey led you back to that reservoir of love that you did feel was there before.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely.
Mm, that's awesome. So how would you kind of label yourself now?
Mm. Yeah, now I like to say that I'm spiritual but not religious.
Mm,
Important to me to clarify. I don't necessarily call myself like a new age spiritualist. I mean, that's just because I'm not going to claim any set group of beliefs.
yeah.
I mean, I just believe in authentic spirituality where you let God lead you. I mean, if you want to call it God, you don't even have to call it God, the universe, whatever. I don't think it cares at all. I know this one guy who would call it purple dishwasher monkey, purple monkey dishwasher. And that was so healing for me. I was in this like spiritual online conference and he was like, purple monkey dishwasher. And I was like, wow, this is like night and day from Christianity where you have to honor God's name and or he will spite you and all these different things. And I believe that. Like they don't care. It's so beyond it. It's so beyond any of our pride and ego and all of that that God doesn't care what you call it. But there is something there. And and yeah, I feel much more, I mean, I feel connected to it again. I feel like there was a plan all along.
Awesome. So something that so in your coaching, and I wanted to say really quickly a distinction that I've heard of therapy and coaching. Therapy is so good to help you ask yourself the questions and dig into the questions, but coaching is when you have a goal. You want advice, you want input, you want a back and forth. So many people get therapy and they're waiting for the back and forth and they just don't get it and they're like, what am I even doing here? Um,
Mm.
so would you agree with that assessment? Coaching is for the goal.
You know, I've heard all kinds of ways of describing the two, and it ultimately depends on the coach and the therapist.
Mm,
My view of therapy is, it's more. structured. It's more usually, hopefully, evidence based. Usually, that's like why someone's therapy.
Yeah, therapy should probably have the person should probably have some kind of actual degree, initials after their name, etc.
Yeah, and some also say, you know, and I wouldn't disagree with this. Therapy is more for like the clinical disorders.
Mm, mm,
It's like to that point, it's great. It's really valuable. See a therapist to, help get the disorder manageable. Therapy is a lot about questions to help you, explore. But, valuable therapy actually does include being told things you can do to help
mm.
heal your brain, help change your brain, reprogram it, and things like that. And then even in coaching, there are many coaches who take that approach of also just believing the answer is within you and helping you explore. But there is often more of a goal. I mean, with therapy, there's still a goal, like manage my depression, whatever it is. With coaching, it's more often like, you know, be comfortable with authentic spirituality or feel more connected to my partner or overcome this very specific symptom of anxiety. There's all kinds of coaches with different niches.
Mm.
And
So I wrote down your thing that you had on your Facebook banner is that you help deconstructing women connect with their authentic spiritual identity. And like it's so interesting because like, okay, how do you help people connect with what feels authentic to them? That's such a cool phrase there.
yeah, well, so many people don't even know where to start, don't take the time to explore these things. A lot of people just kind of feel hurt and stuck in their pain and their confusion, and they just kind of feel stuck there. So a lot of it is, what you were mentioning about helping them explore, giving them the opportunity to focus on them and not think about what they need to do or what their family is needing, but just themselves and just explore and helping people find that trust within themselves. And then some of it is also, providing, like we talked about, different things they can do to find which they actually like as far as, what they could do to practice spirituality in a way that resonates for them.
And
A lot
to
of
have a hand to hold of like, okay, this isn't evil. If you want
Mhm.
to go to the witchy store and buy some crystals, you're not going to get punished for it.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of emotional healing that's also needed to be able to pursue authentic spirituality for a lot of people leaving religion. Again, I know for me, like I had to work through a lot of anger. Some people need to work through grief. And a lot of people just don't know how to do any of those things. And I mean, you can blame them. I mean, I didn't know until I learned and did it myself and all these different things. So I'm just trying to help people get through it faster and easier, with that extra support.
Mm, that's such a valuable service. And if anybody resonates with Michaela and wants to check out, I will put all the information that you can contact her and follow her and the socials down below. Um, is there, okay, this is not like fitting so smoothly in with the whole thing, but it's been bugging me. I want to know, did you end up getting divorced in your first marriage?
Oh, I should have said something about that. No, so as I worked through things and found myself and learned how to choose myself, what happened is that I I stopped needing to control that. For so long, I needed to make sure my husband was okay. I needed to make sure that we didn't break up so that I would be okay because I didn't want to face that pain. But then I came to a point where I said, I'm not prioritizing protecting myself from pain. I'm not prioritizing how he feels. I'm prioritizing taking care of myself and my inner child. So I became a lot more clear with boundaries. I let him have his feelings. I let myself have my feelings and did what I needed to do for me. And through that, you know, we just kind of evolved into a much better place. And it was a lot of what we were needing was just for me to stop trying to control, but also for me to learn to feel my own feelings and then just let him do him. And so letting go of, yeah, that control, I mean, things had a huge turnaround, and things are beautiful now. Not
That's
perfect.
awesome. And how is your relationship with your parents now?
Yeah, now I have a good relationship with both of my parents. I mean, again, like during those COVID years and years after that, things were real tough with my dad. But that was another thing that was happening around this time, learning to set the boundaries. And so, there were some sad moments because me as a, just recovering people pleaser, it would, and I'm very empathetic. So if I would make someone else sad, I would feel sad, which was another reason why I thought I liked to people please. But yeah, there were some times where I had to tell my dad, if you don't stop, I'm leaving. Like I am leaving. And there were times where he didn't. And it was hard to disappoint him like that. But eventually, the boundaries were understood. And again, now that just being further away from that, things are better. Um, and also now being spiritual in my own way, I don't believe the same things he believes. I'll listen to him. It always has come from my ultimate decision about things. But our relationship is good, and yeah, things with my mom, like even with what I'm doing now, like she's like, it's kind of complicated, but I want you to know that like I do support you deep down, because she's so Christian, so she has some weird feelings about it, but she sees the good intent and she loves me and she supports me. So that's
Oh, that's awesome. So
yeah.
you have so many tools from your life, so many relationships and things that you've overcome that just can say, I'm not just talking about it. I've lived it.
Mhm. Yes, 100%.
Wow. Okay, I think those are the only questions that I had that were niggling left over. So yes, do you have any last message you would like to say to the people listening to this?
Yeah, I guess I would just say, wherever you're at in your in your life, in your journey when it comes to spirituality, I'll never say that people have to be spiritual. That was a trigger for me when I wasn't, was that, I didn't want people telling me I need to be spiritual. I remember I even had a therapist that sent me like a worksheet with a self-care wheel of like mental health, emotional health, different things. And one of the wedges on the wheel was spiritual. And I remember getting triggered. But then I read it a little more deeply, and it was saying like even things like yoga or time in nature and journaling. And I was like, okay, but no one
Okay.
spiritual, but there are a lot of benefits to it that are supported in research. And if people are just feeling like that's just not something accessible to them because of this fear and confusion, to just kind of follow your heart. If you feel drawn to do your own research, I encourage that. If you feel drawn to work with someone, like myself, to not neglect the side of us, because in our society, I feel like it can be very black or white of either you're religious and everyone else is wrong and stupid, or you're atheist and everyone else is wrong and stupid. So we feel like we need to be either religious or atheist, but there is a middle ground, and it's worth
Yeah. Spirituality is the opposite of dogma.
it. Yes. I completely agree. And
You
it's a
you just
beautiful
make
thing.
Yeah, you just make your path. You put one foot in front of the other and you just go towards what feels like it resonates with you.
Yeah, exactly. So I just encourage people to, walk their own path, not to worry about other people, do what's right for them. Um, and I know that there's a lot of beauty if they do decide to take that path.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much. The way that I end my conversations is I give hugs. Yes, and hugs to the people listening. I hope that this was encouraging to you. And yeah, thank you so much for a lovely talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay. Okay, bye.
Feeling a personal responsibility for everything that happens, for everybody's faith, trying to keep everybody happy, trying to keep the ball rolling, trying to feel like you have some measure of control and can make everything better is just so heavy. Oh my goodness. So glad that we could have this conversation and really dive into these topics. I'd really love to hear how any of this has brought anything to mind for you and what you're doing right now to sort through that inner stuff. Oh, I also should say that you can connect with Michaela on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. She has a Facebook group called Unbound Faith Post-Christianity Spirituality. And that sounds pretty darn good. Email. I will include all the links for how you can make contact with her and reach out if she feels like she's the right person to help you work through what you're working with. Ooh, she got me a bio. I can read that now. Michaela Giordano Castro is a licensed clinical social worker, trauma-informed therapist, and spiritual coach who helps millennial and Gen Z women rebuild a meaningful spirituality after leaving Christianity. Michaela combines her expertise in trauma and internal family systems therapy with her own transformative experience to guide others in healing from religious trauma, navigating family dynamics, and discovering authentic spirituality beyond traditional doctrines. Oh man, that is so good. If you're here, you probably have spent some time on the YouTubes and know about the different ways that you can support the channel. Another thing that you can do to support the channel, to support me and the work that I'm doing, is by giving up a PayPal donation. Showing me in this way that you care about what I'm doing and believe in the value of it and want to help me to continue doing it would mean the world to me. There is absolutely no pressure or anything. It's only if it feels right for you. But yes, this has been another awesome episode of the Epic Kate podcast. Thank you for being here and opening your heart and spending this time. And look out for the next epic episode.